we're going to jump into the what you're here for, is to learn about how to transport and help injured owls if the opportunity arises. My name is Karla Bloem. I'm the Executive Director of the International Owl Center. We're located in Houston, Minnesota, way down in the southeastern toe of Minnesota, right by Wisconsin and Iowa. So we deal with different states on a regular basis, which can make things more difficult. And we do have more resources on our website. I'll reference some of them here during the program. I am not a licensed wildlife rehabilitator. I will tell you that straight up. I have taken some of the courses. I have read through a bunch of the manuals. I've taken the basic test, and I've been transporting injured raptors for at least 20 years because the closest licensed rehabber for raptors in Minnesota for the most part is 2.5 hours away for us. So who do you call? If you're in our area, they wind up calling me. So we wound up developing a network of people who had basic training on how you pick them up and get them to the rehabbers, because that's half the problem, is getting them to the care that they need. So I'm hoping by doing this, a whole lot of you will be able to better assess when owls need help, what to do, and where to take them. And the more people that know how to do that, the better for owls. So I've got a PowerPoint presentation that I am going to share. Fingers crossed all works well. And I'm going to hide my little controls here so I can see everything. And just so you know, the owl in this picture is Pierce the barred owl. If you've been to the International Owl Center, this is him as he was found on the ground, a little bit too young to be out of the nest, and his eyes were clearly messed up, and that's why he's non-releasable. He has significant vision issues. Okay, so first thing, from what I could see from registrations, the vast majority of you are in the United States, so we're going to be talking about U.S. laws and regulations, partly because I don't know about the regulations in other countries. They could be a whole different ball of wax compared to the United States. So that's what we're going to be looking at. Key thing is, only licensed wildlife rehabilitators can legally take care of sick, orphaned, and injured animals, with the exception of the ones that are completely unprotected, like house sparrows, rock pigeons, European starlings. They have no protections. So if you want to do whatever with a house sparrow, pigeon, or starling, you can have them as a pet. You could try and rehab them if you wanted with no training. Might not be the best thing for the bird, but they don't have any legal protections. Anyone can transport wildlife to a licensed rehabber, and I think they give you 48 hours to do it. So you can't just pick it up and say, oh yes, I'm taking it to a rehabber, and bring it there like a week or two later, which sometimes happens. No, you've got to get it there promptly. Now, this is where the state lines come in, and this is probably going to apply to other states, but for the state of Minnesota, you cannot take an animal out of the state to another state for rehab. So for us, the closest rehab facility is 30 minutes away in La Crosse, Wisconsin. We cannot bring animals there. We have to take our injured owls 2.5 hours up to St. Paul to the Raptor Center. But the Raptor Center has special permission that owls and other raptors can come from out of state to them. So if you live near a state border, check your regulations, talk to rehabilitators, and see what you legally are able to do or not. I know many of you are in Minnesota, so that's the Minnesota part of things. You have to check with other states. Diseases. There's not a whole lot that can transmit between owls or other birds and humans because they have a much higher body temperature than we do, so there's not many things that can live in their bodies as well as ours. So one is chlamydiosis, but that's more pigeons, ducks, and parrots, so not usually something that we have to worry about when we're dealing with raptors. West Nile virus is one that can transmit to humans. It's not a common one to transmit, but it can. So this great horned owl in this picture had West Nile virus. found just down the road from me. Avian influenza, highly pathogenic avian influenza, can transmit to humans. That is probably the biggest concern right now, at least in the Midwest for sure, maybe the rest of the country. That is more waterfowl and animals that eat waterfowl. So bald eagles and great horned owls when it comes to raptors, at least in the eastern United States. So my experience is with the species we have here, which are going to be fairly similar in the eastern United States. If you're in the western US, you're probably going to have some other species than we have here. So how do you know if it has avian influenza? Well, you don't. But the symptoms to look for is anything neurologic. West Nile and avian influenza both cause neurological symptoms. So that's funky head movements, lack of coordination. They might be tipping over. They might have some seizures. They might be doing circling or have respiratory distress. But lead poisoning can also cause the same symptoms, or many of the same symptoms, and that's very common in bald eagles especially. So bear that in mind. So first thing, you have to keep yourself safe. And I mention this because once I got a call about a bald eagle that was tangled in a tree, hanging upside down, way high up in a tree, after dark during a lightning storm. And the finder said, "I don't care, I'm going up there anyway to save that eagle." Okay, you're putting yourself at risk, and now somebody may have to come rescue you. Not a good idea. So you need to keep yourself safe. And if you can't keep yourself safe, don't be doing it. So number one, you have to keep yourself safe to avoid somebody needing to rescue you. So avoid the dangerous situations, wear leather gloves if at all possible, and use PPE, so personal protective equipment like masks, disposable gloves, or things like that if avian influenza is suspected, especially if you've got any immunocompromising or health issues yourself. You don't have to wear those, but just beware that that is something that you would be putting yourself at risk for if you're rescuing a bald eagle or a great horned owl that's got neurological symptoms going on. So this is for you to make that decision about yourself. And in this picture, I'm returning a young barn owl to its nest. I didn't know what to expect from barn owl parents because they're very rare in this area. I didn't want one to smack me in the face or in the head. And I know captive ones can be super aggressive. I wanted to make sure I didn't get a face full of barn owl talons when I was putting the baby back. That's when the parents are going to be most aggressive, is if you're handling their young ones, like replacing them in a nest. So sometimes headgear to protect your face and head and back can be important also. Species identification is really, really helpful. So if you call a rehabber and say, I've got this injured bird, being able to tell them what species it is can help tremendously, because that helps them know, is this normal behavior? Should they be in this environment? Is this a bird that doesn't need help? Those kinds of things. So I'm going to spend a significant bit of time talking about species identification, but kind of roll through several of them. So in this picture, this owl was found in Lock and Dam number 6 over by La Crosse on the Mississippi River, standing in there, unable to get out, totally waterlogged. Large owl with ear tufts, yellow eyes, black bill. So that's going to be a great horned owl. So eye color, bill color, ear tufts, and size are normally the big things that you're going to be looking at. So this is a great horned owl. Okay, now we've got an owl hanging upside down from fishing line in a tree. And if some of you have followed us on social media, this is a very familiar picture because this just happened a week and a half ago or something. It is a brownish owl, although sometimes they'll appear a little bit more gray to people. It has a yellow bill, brown eyes, and if you look at the breast, there's vertical striping on the breast, and on the upper chest, it's horizontal. So this is a barred owl, which is very different than a barn owl. Little owls that like to come down chimneys and get into your house. These are typically going to be screech owls. So eastern screech owl in the eastern United States, western screech owl in the western United States. If you've got one flying around in the house, it's little with ear tufts, and they have kind of pale yellow eyes. Sometimes they look a little bit greenish. The eastern ones can come in gray or in red. The western ones are typically just gray, although I think there's a little tiny pocket of kind of cinnamon colored ones. If they come into a house and they're in a chimney, you do want to take them to a rehabber, even if they can just fly away, because often they've inhaled some soot, or they may be dehydrated. Who knows how long they've been in the chimney. So just because you think, oh yeah, that looks great, let's just let it go, it should get to a rehabber if at all possible to assess the lungs. Now here's a species that's got long gangly legs. Most owl species you're not going to see the legs like this, other than burrowing owl. Long gangly legs, it's got that heart-shaped face, dark eyes, whitish bill, generally speckling on the whole front side. It can have a buffy background like this. It can have a pure white background. It can just have a few spots. It can have a lot of spots. This is the American barn owl, which is now different than the barn owl that's in Europe and the one that's in Australia. They've been split into 3 different species. Ours are way bigger than the ones in Europe and make different vocalizations. This is a little one that doesn't have ear tufts, but it's got yellow eyes, black bill, very black talons, and fuzzy little toes. And this is an owl that allows very close approach. During winter, if this owl is on its normal perch, it'll probably be there every day, and you can walk up within 6 to 8 feet of it, and it might open its eyes like, leave me alone. Northern saw-whet owls will often allow very close approach. So this is why species identification is really important, because just because you can get close to a saw-whet owl does not mean that it needs help. This one is a tricky one for a lot of people because it looks so much like a great horned owl. But it's like a great horned owl that you ran through the dryer on hot about 10 times because it's shrunk down. So it's got the yellow eyes, black bill, it's got ear tufts. These are laying down, and keep in mind that if an owl has ear tufts, they don't always stick up. Sometimes they're laying down. So this long-eared owl's ear tufts are laying down. Much finer barring on the tail than a great horned owl. And the other thing, the face is a little bit different than a great horned owl. Coloration wise, it's really similar, but long-eared owls have more of think of Bert and Ernie from Sesame Street. Long-eared owls have more of a Bert face. It's more vertical, and great horned owls are more Ernie. It's more of a horizontal type face, fat and wide. But basically long-eared owls are a lot smaller than great horned owls, even though they look really similar. Short-eared owls. These are the ones that I get calls about in the fall when farmers are harvesting their fields. They'll say, oh my gosh, I'm in the combine and there's this owl down in the middle of the beans. There may not be anything wrong with it. Short-eared owls roost on the ground. That's normal for them. So short-eared owls have yellow eyes, black bills, and around their yellow eyes, they have this really dark, it looks like super dark eye makeup all the way around their eyes, kind of creepy looking, and stripes on the front. But they're very often roosting on the ground or on a fence post. Now, getting into babies, this is where things get hard and where they get very important, because very often young owls leave the nest before they can fly. For better, for worse, it happens a lot in owls. And then you have to know what species it is to know, well, where am I looking for a nest? Is this going to be a cavity nest? Is it going to be a snag where the top of a dead tree is snapped off and it's rotted down? Is it going to be an open stick nest? Is it going to be a ground nest? So knowing how to identify species of young owls is really helpful. So for this one, I mean, basically young owls are fuzzy, usually whitish fuzzy, and then so you really have to look at the eye color and bill color. So this is a big one with yellow eyes and a black bill. That one is a young great horned owl. So here's, a medium to large size owl down on the ground. He's too young to be out of the nest because here you can see the sheaths that those developing feathers are erupting out of. The wing feathers are not fully grown. This guy should not be out of the nest yet. He's too young to be out of the nest. Who is it? It's got a yellow bill, dark eyes, medium to largish owl. In our area, that one is a barred owl. Now, if you're out where spotted owls are, oh my, I could not tell you the difference between the two. Here's sort of a funny picture that I encountered in my early years. This is an owl in the engine compartment of a van. Somebody had called me about these young owls on the ground, and by the time I got there, they couldn't find one of them. One of them was standing by the wheel of a van, and for whatever reason, the finder decided to pop the hood of the van. Thank goodness, because this owlet was in the engine compartment when they popped the hood open. So eyes are narrowed down to slits. You can see there's ear tufts, kind of a horn-colored bill. This is a young eastern screech owl. So screech owls will very often do this tall, thin posture where they get skinny and then they slit their eyes down, just barely squinting and looking at you, but pretending their eyes are closed. This one, probably not too many people get the pleasure of seeing. These do not look anything like the adults. Kind of a pumpkin-y orange body, chocolate brown head, and a huge white V on the forehead with black bill and yellow eyes. Is a young northern saw-whet owl, and they're just teensy weensy little things, just adorable, but they don't look anything like the adults. And then this is one probably not many people are going to run across either. So it's got yellow eyes, a dark bill, and it's medium sized, and it's kind of got that Burt-shaped head. This one is a young long-eared owl. That one might be kind of hard to identify. Okay. So that's not everything. Those are the ones that I've encountered over here. If you're in the western US, you're going to have other species to deal with. Some of these will be the same, some will be different. Now the next question, once you've found an owl and you've figured out what it is, hopefully, even if you haven't, you have to figure out, does it need help? Because the answer is not always yes. When an owl is on the ground, sometimes it doesn't need help. If you look at this top picture up here, those wing feathers are not fully grown in. Remember we were looking at the young barred owl and you see kind of this straw that the feather is erupting out of the end? That's the sheath that the feather is growing out of. When they're fully grown in, they're supposed to be out of the nest. If they're only partially grown in like this, the owl's too young to be out of the nest and it needs some assistance one way or another. If a wing is whacked out, if a leg is wonky, then it definitely needs help. If you're seeing blood on it, if it's fully feathered and can't fly and lets you walk right up to it when it's standing on the ground, that bird needs help. If you can walk up to it and it acts tame, normally those need help, with the caveat of a northern saw-whet owl on its winter roost will probably let you do that anyway. Or the other thing that happens a little bit earlier in the winter, late fall, early winter, sometimes snowy owls coming down south for the first time who are not used to seeing people will be on the ground, because that's normal. Snowy owls like to roost on the ground, especially out in the middle of a cornfield or something, and they just look like a plastic bag floating around out there. But they very often will allow close approach because people? What the heck are people? They haven't seen them before. And it doesn't take them long to realize, okay, you shouldn't let people walk up to you. But sometimes they will allow that, and there's nothing wrong with them. So they're kind of hard to assess sometimes. If they just are not visually responsive, they're not tracking anything, or if they have uneven pupils. Owls can have one large pupil and one small pupil at the same time. That's normal, but that's normally when one eye is in a darker, in a shadow, and one eye is in the light. But they'll adjust back to the same size when they're in the same light levels. But this owl here, you see, has one very large pupil, one small one, and they're not adjusting back. That means there's something wrong also. Now, back to young owls again. So they look too young to be out of the nest. They absolutely look too young to be out of the nest, but most of them are fine. So this picture is a fledgling, or more likely a brancher, like he's just moving out of the nest, but he's doing it on his own, on the proper time schedule. This young barred owl is fine. It doesn't need help. It should be out of the nest. But when you look at it, you're like, oh my gosh, it's like half size and it's so small. But this is what they look like when they're leaving the nest. This is a young fledgling barred owl, great horned owl. You guys knew that. Yellow eyes, black bill. But just all fuzz, but well-developed facial disc. And as we'll see in a different picture, fully grown wing feathers. That's kind of the cue. But when you look at these, you're like, they're fuzzy. They shouldn't be out of the nest, right? Here's that fledgling screech owl. This is the one that was under the van. Fledgling, this is what they look like when they leave the nest. It's old enough to be out of the nest. Here's a saw-whet owl. And you see, you've probably seen on social media the pictures of baby owls laying on their tummies. Yes, they do actually do that. That is one thing that is actually correct. It's not because their heads are too heavy. It's just baby owls like to lie down. So this is a young saw-whet owl lying down on a perch. So just because a young owl is lying down on its belly does not mean it's something's wrong with it. That can be a totally normal behavior for a young owl. So what you're looking for is the wing feathers. When you're looking at a young owl, get a look at the wing feathers. And if it's doing fairly well, it's going to fluff up and do this big turkey display. It's a defense display, and they're trying to poof up, look really scary, and trying to scare you away. And then you can get a great look at their wing feathers. And if those things are fully grown in and you're not seeing the straw, that shaft or the sheath that they're coming out of, they're old enough to be out of the nest. So if you try and put them back in the nest, they're just going to jump right out. Totally waste of your time, because they're not going to stay there. They shouldn't be there anymore. So with young owls, always look at the wing feathers to see if they're fully grown like this. So if they're this big, they may be perfectly fine. Some species will spend some time on the ground before they can fly decent, in which case, if they're perfectly healthy, you can get them, if they're on the ground, you can either pick them up with gloves, put them up on a branch so they're not on the ground, because when they're on the ground and not flying decent, they're very vulnerable to dogs and cats and fox, coyotes, all kinds of ground predators, because they can't fly yet. But the one secret weapon they do have, and I didn't have a great video of this, young owls can climb up trees, including, and I've witnessed this, literally straight up a tree trunk, like 20 feet, with their little talons grabbing into the bark, and they're biting with their beaks, and their little wings are flapping. They literally can climb straight up a tree. It's easier if they have an angled tree to climb up, so you can also put them near an angled tree, and they'll climb up there and get up into the branches where they're safer until they're flying decent. Or you can take a branch and nudge the back of their legs, and usually they'll step up onto the branch, and then you can move them elsewhere. So those are some secrets to helping those fledglings that aren't flying well yet. And if you've heard that their parents won't take them back because you touch them and they'll smell you, owls can't smell worth a darn. They couldn't care less if you've touched them. They want their babies back. They will take them back. So if you've touched them, that's not going to scare the parents off. So if you've got a young owlet that seems to be perfectly fine, but it's too young to be out of the nest, you can put it back in the nest. This can be a bit harrowing. So in this particular instance, we have a small barred owl. We were able to take it to a rehabber and have it checked out that it was fine. And it took a long ladder and a couple of people and a little bit of guts to get it back in the hole up on this in this dead tree up here. And if you look way in the background, that's Mom. She was watching the whole thing the whole time. There was a hole. It was a snapped off dead tree. It rotted down. They had nested in there, but there was a rotted little ski slope that went out a hole. So they stuffed a t-shirt into the hole and got the owlet back up in where it should be. But you need to know that a barred owl would be in a cavity or in a rotted off snag like that, because you find the baby on the ground. So where are you looking for the nest? Great horned owls often are out of the nest before they should be. So if you can't get them all the way back in the nest, because their nests are often really high up, one thing you can do is make a nest platform and put up on the tree. If the owlet is old enough to thermoregulate, so it's got a decent amount of feathers, if it's just a little itty bitty nestling, you can't do this. But if it's old enough that it's got enough fluff, it can maintain its own feathers, you can put it on a nest platform near the nest, because the actual nest here is much higher and was unreachable. And Mom and Dad, they just cue in on the sound. So as long as there's a baby begging somewhere, they go looking for it. If the young are old enough. If you have a little bitty nestling on the ground, they don't look for those. It has to be an older owlet that's partially grown making begging calls for them to go feed it. The little ones, they won't go for. So if it's, you probably should send pictures to a rehabber and say, is this old enough? Should I be doing this? So get some advice on doing this if you can. One thing that works great for great horned owls is a laundry basket filled with wood shavings. Never use sawdust because that holds water, and you need things to be draining well. You drill holes in the bottom of the laundry basket, fill it with wood shavings, and put it up in a tree, in a crotch of a tree, on a branch, wire it up there, put babies back in there, and they work great for renesting young owlets. And if a nest falls apart, you can put that up there. Mom can raise babies in there, no problem. So laundry baskets are your friend for young great horned owls. So how do you safely catch a raptor? This is the theory behind it. It doesn't always go this easy. Basically what you're trying to do is cover the head more than anything. If they can't see, they tend not to fight very much. So the bird is normally going to be grounded, and you're going to take a large towel, a blanket, a jacket, or whatever you have handy, and very slowly walk up to the bird. This is much easier if you have two people. So one person is approaching from the back, one is approaching from the front, and depending on how the bird is reacting, one can get the attention so the other one can throw the blanket or jacket or towel over top of the bird. So make sure you get it over the head, and then you want to, preferably wearing gloves, kind of scoop the wings against the side of the bird's body. And if it's a smaller bird, that's good enough. You can just pick it up as a ball without doing anything to the feet and plop it in a box or a carrier. If it's something bigger, like a red-tailed hawk, great horned owl, bald eagle, like this is closer to large hawk or small eagle size, you need to have control of the legs. So you got to watch out because those have the pokey parts on them. So you're looking to grab the legs above the feet so you have control of them, but making sure that you've got the towel over the head at all times so they can't struggle. So how you hold the feet can vary a little bit. You can go for one leg in each foot, choked up above the feet. Or if you're comfortable, you can get, like on a larger bird, one finger or two fingers between the legs and then grab around the legs otherwise, as you see here. I'll show you afterwards. I have a stuffed owl I can show you how to do this on. So here's a video. Let me change a couple settings here so we optimize for video so it's not all jerky. And I need to hide this again. So this is my husband and I, and there's a juvenile eagle in the ditch on the side of the road. My husband has an old fabric shower curtain. I've got some gloves. The black flies are all over the place, bothering the eagle and both of us, and the person taking the video. So we're going slowly because we don't know how it's going to react. There was a bug bothering the photographer. So I'm grabbing with my gloves, getting control of the wings and the legs, because it's a large bird. This is an eagle. And making sure that the head stays covered so it's not struggling as much. Okay, let me unoptimize for video. Oops. And then you're going to put it in a box or a pet carrier. Cardboard boxes are awesome because you don't have to get them back from the rehabilitator. And they come in all different shapes and sizes. That's what we tend to use. My exception is usually for bald eagles, because if you get a bald eagle that's like broke a wing but is still quite strong, I've had them. I was so proud of myself. I had a big enough cardboard box for a bald eagle, and there was no way that box was going to stay intact with that eagle in it, and I literally had to hold my body over the box until we got someplace where I could move it into a dog carrier. So bear that in mind. Everything else is good in a cardboard box as long as it's structurally sound and not one that's half falling apart. You want it to be, ideally, if you've got options, big enough that the bird can stand, but not, and so the tail is not bent. But you don't want it so big that they can go for a walk in there. You want them not moving in there because they're injured or sick or something. Put an old t-shirt or an old towel in the bottom of the box. Great use for all your torn t-shirts and old towels that you don't want anymore. You can punch holes in the cardboard box. If you do that, do it before you put the bird in the box so the bird's not freaked out. If you use a dog carrier or a cat carrier, make sure you completely cover it with a blanket or a towel. If they can see out that wire mesh, they tend to thrash against it trying to get out. And don't ever, ever, ever use one that's all wire. Like some dog cages are all wire, and what a bird will do in there is say, oh my gosh, I want to get out, and they bang and bash and bash and bang, and they break their feathers, and those feathers aren't going to grow in until their next molt, or they have to be manually imped in, which is not as good as their own feathers. So don't use wire cages. So a pet carrier completely covered with a blanket or a towel, or cardboard boxes are wonderful. Now, special word about screech owls. These are little fakers, so they will play dead sometimes. This little screech owl laying there in my hand is perfectly fine. There's nothing wrong with it. It's playing dead. So when you've got a screech owl in your hand and you think, oh, he's not doing well, so I'm just not going to hold him real tight. Yeah, more than once I've done that thinking, oh, he's in bad shape, and had him shoot out of my hand. So be very careful with screech owls, and they're very hard to assess how they're doing because they play dead or have their eyes squinty shut like they're really not doing well. So these guys are little fakers. You want to make sure you get all the information recorded to go with the bird to the rehabilitator, because if it's a bird like an adult of a species that's resident on territory year-round, so think great horned owl, barred owl, screech owl, and it's going to be releasable, it needs to go back to where it came from because it probably has a mate. If it's a young one, it can probably get released in another place, or if it's a migratory species, it doesn't matter so much where it gets released depending on the time of year. But they need to know where it came from and who found it. So we have forms, and you can get this off our website, the list of information that you need to put on there. Put the date, because they need to know when it was picked up, what species it is if you know, who found it, and contact information, where it was found, and very importantly, any history around it. So was it found on the side of a road? Did it appear to have hit a window? Were there feathers plucked out? Did it look like it was attacked by something? Or did you see it get attacked by a cat? Any notes you have about what may have happened to it is very helpful also. And then if you did anything, like I had to overnight it because I got it at 8 o'clock at night and couldn't get it to the rehabber the next day, or those types of things. Very important, we have forms that we print out, fill those out, and we tape them to the box so it goes with the bird to the wildlife rehabilitator. So, finding your closest licensed rehabber. You might know who that is, you might not know who that is, or you might be in a different location and on vacation when you find one. How do you find your closest rehabber? So, Animal Help Now is a website that's dedicated to helping people find who they need. So you can put in your zip code, it will tell you who the closest rehabbers are, with some caveats. Or on our website, the International Owl Center website, we do have a section for if you found an injured owl in the menu, and there's the section on what do I do that covers some of the things we just talked about, but also a section to find a rehabber. And it's basically listed by state. Many of the states will have a list of all their rehabbers, and then they'll say this one's licensed for birds, this one isn't, this one does raptors, this one does bats, this one only does raccoons, this one just does rabbits. So be aware that not all rehabilitators rehabilitate all animals. Most of them don't. So for the states that don't have a list of all their rehabbers, we listed just the rehab facilities that take owls. So you can find that on our website. Bear in mind when you call a rehabber, generally they're not sitting around twiddling their thumbs waiting for the phone to ring. They're busy helping other birds or animals that need their help. So expect to leave a message and expect they will call you back when they can. If you're really desperate, call a few rehabbers in your area, because odds are very good they know each other and will be able to say, oh yeah, so-and-so is gone on vacation and somebody else is helping take care of birds, or they're swamped but I could take this, or they may have a personal cell phone that they could connect with them on. Anyway, but leave a message. Somebody will get back to you. Key thing in the meantime, minimize stress. So by the time you can pick up a bird, it's in bad shape, and stress literally can push them over the edge and kill them, literally. So minimizing stress is key. Did I say it's essential to minimize stress? It's essential to minimize stress. So that's noise, people looking at the bird. Yeah, they're far gone by the time that you're picking them up. If a bird seems tame, it's most likely in terrible, terrible shape. I once had somebody tell me, oh yeah, this owl we picked up was so tame. We had it on the couch with the kids and they were petting it and it was just so tame. Okay, that bird was on the verge of death. It was not being tame. So don't do things like that. So when you're driving with the bird, you want to keep the radio off or very quiet and keep your voices down, because all of that adds more stress to the bird. And don't drive like you're driving NASCAR, or drive like you're driving with a bird in the car, which is very different. If you have to overnight it or keep the bird at your place for a while, you want to keep the box with the bird in it in a dark, quiet part of your home, away from kids, away from pets, away from TV, radio, that kind of stuff, while it's waiting for a ride to a rehabber. So that might be overnight, it might be a few hours during the day, but just keep it quiet and keep everybody and everything else away from it. If you want, especially in winter, you can put the box half on, half off, a heating pad set on low, only set on low. This should only be minimal heat, and the bird needs to have the option of choosing, do I want that extra heat or do I not want that extra heat? Never put it on there completely unless somebody, a rehabilitator, has told you to do that. And don't use the disposable hand warmers because those would likely be too warm. Very important, do not give food or water unless a rehabilitator has instructed you to do so. You might be able to say, oh my gosh, this bird is starving, it weighs nothing, I'm going to give it some food, and you may kill it, because if they're chilled, their digestive system, if their body temperature is low, their digestive system is not working. If they're dehydrated, which normally happens if they're starving, and you give them food, it can seize up their digestive tract and kill them. So literally, you can kill them by giving them food. And birds, especially hawks that have a crop where they can store extra amount of food, owls can't do this. They can get sour crop because they're so stressed from being transported that's you literally just caused another problem. Do not feed them. Just like if you're going into surgery, you're not going to eat a big meal, a steak supper before you're going to surgery. You don't eat before you do that. So again, with minimizing stress, don't be peeking at the bird all the time in the box to see, ooh, are you okay? Hey, have our friends come over and peek at the bird. Just don't do that unless you need to. If it's been a while, like if it's been in the box for several hours, you haven't heard movement, and you're now going to transport it, yes, check to make sure the bird's alive, especially if you've overnighted it, because sometimes they don't make it through the night. Check it before you go. And once it's in the box, don't keep opening it up and taking more pictures of it. Again, minimize the stress, unless a rehabilitator asks you to take pictures. And don't sit and pet the cute, fluffy baby owls, because they're so cute. Just don't. Okay, getting the owl to help. A lot of times people will say, well, I don't have time to drive 2.5 hours up to St. Paul, so, maybe I'm just not going to pick it up or do anything because I can't bring it up there. Well, guess what? Other people can. So you can. That's an option. But some rehabilitators have a network of volunteer transporters that will come pick the birds up and bring the birds to them. So just because you can't transport it doesn't mean somebody else won't. Definitely call anyway. And even if you can go part way, that is a really big help too. So for us, with it being 2.5 hours to the Twin Cities, very often we'll have somebody that goes to Rochester, which is about halfway, and then somebody else that'll take it from Rochester on up. So one person doesn't have to kill their whole day driving a bird up and coming back home again. And if you really want to help out, contact your local rehabber and see if you can volunteer as a driver for injured birds. Most of them are quite thankful to have people to help. And some of them will require you to have special training to do that. So equipment to keep on hand. So some of this stuff I just keep in the back of my car at all times. Leather welding gloves. All of my vehicles have leather welding gloves in them. Old blankets, large towels, things like that to toss over the birds. My vehicles all have those. A cardboard box, you can keep it broken down. Or pet carriers, those are harder. They take up more space. So I normally don't keep those in a vehicle. Old shirts and towels to put in the bottom of the boxes. I have tons of those. Heating pad, optional. That's not a necessary thing to have. And paper and pen, so you can record all of that data on the date, the location, finder, contact info, and anything else about the bird when you send it to the rehabber. Things to be aware of. by the time you found these birds, they're in really bad shape. So for a lot of them, and that means quite a lot of them, the kindest thing that can be done is euthanasia because of the severity of their injuries, because they're in bad shape. That's why you were able to catch them. So then some people feel bad about, oh my gosh, I spent all this time and the bird just was euthanized. But your time transporting that bird shortens their suffering. Imagine if you left them there on the side of the road, how long they're going to languish and how crappy the last few hours of their life are going to be versus getting them directly to a rehabber where they can be humanely euthanized and assessed, because you never know which ones are going to make it. I've seen birds that I was positive were going to die, live, and I've seen birds that I was positive were going to live, not live. So you never know. But do be aware that a lot of them will probably be euthanized because of the severity of their injuries. Remember that rehabbers are focused on their patients first. The first priority is not getting back to you with an update on how the bird is doing. That's a secondary thing. So if you ask for an update, there might be some rehabbers that don't have time to give updates. And others, it might be a few weeks before you hear back. Just be patient because their first priority is that bird that you brought to them. And rehabbers are not going to be able to pay your expenses for your gas or mileage to transport birds for them. If you're going to do that, that's something you have to be able to do. Rehabbers are not getting paid to be doing this. So some of you may have an interest in becoming a rehabilitator or learning more about what that involves. The big caution is it's extremely time-consuming and very expensive. The government is not going to give you funding to do this. They will impose boatloads of regulations on you, but they're not going to give you any money to help you do this. You have to raise the money or pay that out of your own pocket as a rehabber. And just so you know, super basic information about some time commitment. So the federal regulations, if you're going to rehabilitate birds, state you must be at least 18 years of age with a minimum of 100 hours of hands-on experience gained over the course of at least 1 whole year rehabilitating each type of migratory bird you intend to rehab. So if you want to work with raptors, guess what? You will need to spend at least 100 hours working with another wildlife rehabilitator before. That's just one of the many requirements. There are a ton of requirements with good reason. There didn't used to be a lot of regulations, and some people were doing well with birds and some were doing more harm than good because they didn't know what they were doing. Not maliciously, they just didn't know better. So there's a lot of regulations and a lot of training. I mean, these are animals. Imagine, would you just say, oh, I'm going to start taking care of injured dogs? There's an awful lot to know. So for more information, if you're interested in looking into becoming a wildlife rehabilitator, there's 2 main places to look. If you're in North America, the National Wildlife Rehabilitators Association, and they have courses and they have manuals, and we're talking very thick manuals. And also the International Wildlife Rehabilitation Council also has courses, and I think they have manuals also. There's an enormous amount of stuff to learn. And some states will also have rehabilitation organizations. And you would want to check with your state natural resources department to find out what your state regulations are. So there are federal regulations if you're doing birds. Anybody doing birds is covered by federal laws. And then your state is probably going to have additional regulations on top of that that may be even more strict. So Minnesota's are more strict than the federal ones. So, whole lot of information. Let me open this up to questions, and you may have to hang on. Stop. Can't talk and do this at the same time. If you go into, if the Q&A is not showing up, there should be a ... with more. If you have questions, pop them into the Q&A. And I think I have it set up so that you should be able to see the other people's questions. And you can upvote questions. So So far, I'm not seeing any questions. But yeah, there we go. What's the difference between a falconer and a rehabber? Okay, very different things. So a falconer is somebody that has a license to use hawks for hunting. So they don't get to just keep them as pets. It's, okay, I'm going out rabbit hunting today, or we're going to be hunting ducks today. So that's a whole separate set of licensing. A wildlife rehabilitator takes care of injured animals. So a falconer is not licensed to take care of injured animals. Let me mark that one as done. What time of year would owls be found that need rehabbing? It can literally be any time of year, but spring is really heavy because that's when you get young ones falling out of the nest, and all kinds of things happen to young ones. So spring and summer tend to be the crazy seasons for wildlife rehabilitators in general, but that includes for owls. But you get owls getting hit by cars. This time of year, there's starving snowy owls that are coming in. So there's always something that can be happening, but spring and summer are the busiest. Are there any specific signs that the owl has been poisoned by something like a rodenticide? You can't always see it, but if you're seeing blood coming out of the mouth or the cloaca, so that's the back end, there's one all-purpose hole on birds. So if you're seeing blood coming out of an orifice, that is a potential sign of rodenticide poisoning if you're not seeing some other trauma with it, like they've got hit by a car or something like that. There can be internal hemorrhaging, but you're not going to be able to see that. Any special considerations for an owl that was hit by a car for head trauma? Head trauma, get them to a rehabber as fast as humanly possible, because you can have brain swelling, and they can, if they get medication sooner, that can help faster. So for head trauma, get them there as soon as possible. And keep in mind, like for us, they're going to be going to the Raptor Center. It depends on when it is, you'd have to check, but sometimes the cutoff is like 5 or 6 p.m. They won't take birds any later than that, but just get them there as soon as possible. But same for all the other stuff, keep them dark, keep them quiet. There's not anything else you can really do other than get them there as soon as possible. Okay, yay, you guys have questions. This is great. Are there resources, for example, books, apps, websites you recommend for helping to identify a bird accurately? Well, there's probably a zillion. All About Birds is a great place to start because they'll have a whole bunch of different photos that you can scroll through. Field guides will usually have 1 or 2 poses, but when you get to All About Birds, they'll usually have a bunch of photos. So you're seeing adults and juveniles and different color morphs and different views. But there's probably a bunch of other ones also. So, and Merlin's more about vocalizations, and an injured bird is generally not going to vocalize. So the vocal ones probably aren't going to help you. What can people do to reduce owl injuries? There's a few things. So we talked about screech owls coming down chimneys, and sometimes barred owls will even come down chimneys, or wood ducks or mergansers. One thing that we did on our house and is helpful for a lot, if you have an open chimney and you don't have chimney swifts nesting in it. Now, if you have chimney swifts nesting, they're rare. You want to let them use your chimney. But if you don't, if you put a cap on the chimney, it still allows airflow, but a screech owl can't get in there, a bird can't get in. That will help them. Taking down soccer nets when they're not being used, because you wouldn't believe how many owls fly into nets. That helps them. Google owl and soccer net, and you'll find a zillion pictures. So even though they may not seem severely injured, they can have sprains and things like that, or damaged feathers. taking down barbed wire that's never going to be used again. Google owl and barbed wire and you'll see a whole lot of really gory photos, and most of those owls wind up being euthanized. Be cautious of driving, but usually when an owl flies in front of the car, it's like, and like you doesn't even register what it is. So oftentimes if you're hitting them with a car, there was nothing you could do to prevent it. I mean, don't drive like a maniac, but those are a few things that people can do to reduce. Well, and then don't use rodenticides. I should mention that one. So owls and rodenticides, oh my gosh, it's a gigantic deal. I'm trying to remember the last study that I just saw about a week ago. 91% of the owls that were tested had measurable levels of rodenticides in their system. So this isn't a little problem, this is gigantic. So just like never, ever, 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 ever use rodenticides. Don't use glue traps either, because owls and other things get stuck on them too. So live traps, snap traps, zap traps, CO2 traps, bucket traps. There's a million options, but don't use rodenticides. So those are a bunch of things you can do to reduce owl injuries. Oh, great. Michael Deese, who's a rehabber, is responding, saying that rodenticide poisoning often shows as a very pale mouth lining because of internal bleeding. Thank you very much. What if the owl dies before getting to rehab or is found dead? Very good question. We get calls about that quite a bit. You can't keep it and mount it for yourself. So federal law prohibits private individuals from keeping them. They can go to educational facilities. So if a school wanted to get one mounted, or a nature center or things like that, they could do that. If it's a common species like a red-tailed hawk, great horned owl, barred owl, honestly, unfortunately, they die enough. Probably everybody that wants one has one. It would be very hard to find somebody willing to take them. So usually they'll say destroy by burning or burying. And burying is really good because if there's rodenticide poisoning, or if there's some disease like West Nile virus, even after the bird is dead, if something eats them, can be transmitted to the next animal. So burying is really good. They get recycled in nature. So don't feel bad about putting it out in the woods or something. Oh, excellent question. Do rehabilitators need to be vets? No. So most rehabilitators are not vets, but rehabilitators are required to have a vet that they work with. So those are kind of two separate things. Although you might have a vet that's a rehabber, most rehabbers are not vets. And how can rehabilitators get medications? You work with your veterinarian to get the medications and prescriptions and such. Very good question. Oh my gosh, 1 hour flat. This is pretty amazing. I'm assuming we probably got through most of the questions. So again, check out our website. If you say, oh my gosh, I forgot what I need to do, go to the internationalowlcenter.org and go to the section I found an injured owl in the menu, and then there's the what to do part, and then find a rehabber part. And I'll also in there put a link to this video, and hopefully we will have this posted on there within a few days also, so you can review it if you need it. So I'm hoping a bunch of you will now know what to do and not to do if you find an injured bird, especially with those young owls. That's just, we get so many young owl questions in the spring. That's a huge one. That you'll know what to do, you can help others know what to do, and hopefully some of you will volunteer with your local wildlife rehabilitators to be basically bird ambulances for them, to help birds get to them, because rehabbers are so busy they don't have time to go pick up the birds. But if somebody can help get them there, totally awesome. So thank you for learning more. If you have more questions, you can email me on our website. If you go under About Us and Staff, you can find me in there, Karla Bloem. So it's Karla at internationalowlcenter.org. So thank you very much, and have a great night.